So this is the decimal notes continued. We left off with talking about rounding decimals. So the first thing in review, you want to underline the decimal place to be rounded. So for example, round 876 thousandths to the nearest hundredths. So I'm going to go ahead and underline the place value where I want to round to, so which is the 7 is in the hundredths place. Then you want to look at the number to the right of the decimal value that I want to round to, and that would be the 6. So if the number is 5 or higher, that means the hundredths place value, which is the 7, would round to the next value, would be 8. If it's 4 or less, that means it would stay the same. Okay? So since the 6 is greater, 5 or greater, that means the 7 is going to change to an 8. So we would write 0.88. Okay? You notice if I'm rounding to the hundredths place, okay, all the other numbers would drop. So it's very important to drop all digits to the right of the rounded place value. The round place value is hundredths. So that's where my value or my number should stop. So let's try some. Number 1, round 1 and 23 hundredths to the nearest tenths. So tenths place value, underline the tenths place value, which is the 2. And then I'm looking at the 3. The 3 is going to tell me whether the 2 is going to stay the same or round up to a 3. Well, 3, okay, is less than 4 or less, so that means this 2 in the tenths place is going to stay the same. So I would round it to 1 and 2 tenths. Again, I round to the tenths, so that means I'm ending in the tenths place. All the other numbers after the tenths place are dropped. Round 32 and 56 thousandths to the nearest hundredths. All right, underline the place value where I want to round, which is 5 in the hundredths place. I'm looking at the 6. 6 tells me that it's higher than 5 or higher. So that means the 5 in the hundredths place is going to round up to a 6. So around that, I would write that as 32 and decimal 6 hundredths. Again, I'm ending in the hundredths place, and it's rounded up to a 6 because the 5, the number to the right of it, is higher than 5. Number 3, round 157 and 98 thousandths to the nearest tenths. Right? Tenths is my 0. I'm looking at the 9, which is to the right. 9 is 5 or greater, so that means that 0 is going to round up. So I'm going to write it as 157 decimal and decimal 1 tenth. I rounded to the tenth, so I stop at the tenths. All the other numbers are dropped. Round 5 and 7, 752 thousandths to the nearest hundredths. So underlining the 5 in the hundredths place. I'm looking at the 2. 2 is going to be less than 4 or less. So that means my 5 in the hundredths place stay the same. So I'm rounding up to the hundredths place. 5 hundredths is where I stop. The 5 is the same because the 2 is 4 or less. All right, how do we compare decimals? All right, first of all, we got to line up the decimals. Step 2, we're going to add 0 so each number has the same number of decimal places. In step 3, you were going to use decimal place value to compare. We're always going to start from the left. You're going to rewrite as the original number or form. Okay, so example. Okay, we have 1 and 38 hundredths and 1 and 65 hundredths. So first of all, I'm going to line them up. So I'm going to write them vertically. So I have 100, 1 and 38 hundredths, and then I have 1 and 65 hundredths. Okay. So then I'm going to add zeros. So they have the same number of decimal places. Well, they have the same number of decimal places. Each decimal has 2 decimal places. Okay? Same number. So I don't need to add any zeros. Then I start with the left. So do they have the same one? They have the same number in the ones. Okay? And then I realize in the tens place they have different numbers. So I compare, I look to see which place value is different. So the tenths are different. So I have 3/10 or 6/10. So is 6/10 or 3/10 larger? So the 6 is larger than the 3. So the 1 and 65/100 is going to be greater. So 1 and 38/100 is less than 1 and 65/100. Let's compare 7 and 2/10 and 7 and 9/10. Okay, again, we're going to line them up. So I have 7 and 2/10 and 7 and 9/10. Okay, so go start at the left. Okay, well, 7 and 7 in the whole, and they're the same. Okay, and then we start compare the 2 and the 9. 2 or 9? 2/10 or 9/10? Well, 9/10 is bigger. So the 7 and 9/10 is bigger. Or we can say 7 and 2/10 is less than 7 and 9/10. Then we have 1 and 38 thousandths and 1 and 38 hundredths. Okay? So again, I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to line them up. And then you notice that I have 2 decimal places here and 3 decimal places. So I have to add a 0 so that each number or each value has the same number of decimal places. Now I can compare. So first of all, I'm going to start to the left with the ones place. Well, 1 and 1 is the same. Then I move over to the tens place. Well, I notice 0 and 3 are different. So I'm going now in the tens place is different. So 0 tenths or 3 tenths larger. 3 tenths is larger. So that means 1 and 38 thousandths is less than 1 and 38 hundredths. Okay. All right, 3 and 248 thousandths or 3 and 258 thousandths. Okay. Again, I'm going to rewrite them, line them up. 3.248 and 3.256 or 58. Okay. All right, so they're lined up. Now I go to the left. They both have a 3 in the ones. Okay. They both have a 2 in the tenths. You notice in the hundredths, it's different. I have a 4 and a 5 in the hundreds place. So 400ths or 500ths. The 500ths is going to be larger. So that means 3 and 248 thousandths is less than 3 and 258 thousandths. 5 and 24 hundredths or 5 and 34 hundredths. So again, I'm going to line up my decimals. And then I'm going to start to the left to compare. They both have a 5 in the ones place. But in the tenths place, I have a 2 and a 3. So which one's larger? 2 tenths or 3 tenths? The 3 tenths is larger. So 5 and 24 hundredths is less than 5 and 34 hundredths. All right, so ordering from least to greatest. Okay. All right, first of all, I have all these numbers. You notice some of our decimals and some of them are going to be fractions. So you got to make sure they're all in the same form first. Okay. So I noticed that 1/4 in a fraction, I got to change that to a decimal. Well, 1/4 in a decimal is 0.25 or 25 hundredths. Okay. 3/4 in a decimal is 75 hundredths. And then 1/2 in a decimal is 5 tenths. Okay. So as long as I get everything in the same form, now I can start lining them up. Okay? First thing you want to do is line everything up. So you want to start with, first of all, you can start with the first number, which is 0, 0.25, or 0.252, or 3. And then 1/4 is 0.25, okay? And then the 0.247, and then 0.75, 0.751, and then 0.5, and then 0.49. And I'm going to make sure I have all my numbers. So I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers. Lining up, I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lined up. So we're going to fill in the zeros with as placeholders. So I see I have hundreds here, and I have 3 decimal places here and 2 decimal places here. So put zeros where needed. This needs 2 decimal places. So every decimal value is 3 decimal places. Now I'm going to start comparing. Okay? So I'm going to start to the left. Well, none of them have whole numbers. So then I'm going to start So I'm going to start to the left, and they don't have a whole number, so then I'm going to look at the tens place. So I've got 2s and 7s and 5 and a 4 in the tens place. Okay? So since I'm doing least to greatest, all right, I notice that 2 is the least in the tens place. So the 3 numbers that I'm going to list first are the ones with the 2 in the tens place. Okay? So I'm going to start 2 in the tens place. Right here is all of them have 2 in the tens place. So I'm going to look at the next place value, which is the hundreds place. 5, 5, and 4. Well, 2 of them have 2 numbers have a 5, one has a 4. So what's greater is 5. So the 4 is less than the hundreds place. So that means the decimal 247 is the first number is going to be the least. And then I look at the 253 and the 250. Well, the 3 is going to be different in the thousands place, and 0 is going to be less than 3. So the 2500s would be number 2, and the decimal 253 would be number 3. Okay? And then I go back to looking at the tens place again. So I have 7, 7, 5, and 4. So decimal 490 is going to be less in the in tens place. So that would be my 4th one that's least. And then I'm comparing 7, 7, and 5. 5 in the tens place is less than 7 and 7, so that would be my 5th number. And then, of course, I'm comparing between the 750 and the 751. So with these 7s, the 7 is the same in the tens place, 5 is the same as the hundreds, so now I'm comparing the 0 and the 1. 0 is less, so that means the 75 is going to be less than that, so that's going to be number 6. And then 751 is number 7. Then I would write them from least to greatest in their original form. And that concludes our notes on decimal basics.